looks like our wheel is straight, our chain is tight all the way around, our hubs are all tight, everything is tight. Now what you want to check is your brakes. So what you're going to want to check is to make sure that your brakes are not rubbing. Mine are. So we are going to fix that. How you fix that is you get to the spot where it is touching, and then you have these little parts here. We're going to need a new tool. The tool that you're going to need is either a Phillips head or a flathead screwdriver. Mine is a Phillips head for this job. So these right here are your tensioners for your brake or for your brake arms. So your brake arm tensioners are very important. A lot of people don't know how to adjust these properly. They are very, very tedious. All right, so every time you move your wheel or adjust your chain, it's very typical for the brakes to start rubbing or getting off, because if you have your brakes really tight, so you have to just barely tap the lever, it's gonna be really close to the rim at all times. So pretty much always check your brakes, just in general, always check your brakes. All right, so my brakes are rubbing on the left side, which means that this arm needs to get pulled back a little bit more when it springs. So the way to do that is to tighten this. I had to switch screwdrivers, mine was too small. You always want to make sure your screwdriver fits. That one fits, I'm gonna tighten it about half turn. Then you're gonna tap your brake lever a couple times. Make sure it's springy. Looks like it might be rubbing on the other side. Yep, so it looks like I overdid it just a little bit. You don't have to film all. Okay, so the problem I've now run into is that because I pulled my wheel back just a little bit, my brake is actually hitting my tire. See how the brake is touching the tire? Can't have that, because then eventually it's going to burn a hole in your tire and it's going to pop, and that's going to be bad. So what we're going to do is move it. So this is a real good lesson. I'll show you how to move your brake lever, or your brake pad. Your brake pad is on a little slide system. It's one bolt, usually a size 5. Yep, size 5. All you do is loosen it. Make sure you're holding this part at end and end whenever you loosen it, because it's going to move. And I'm going to slide mine down just a little bit. Too much. All right. So now that it's centered, you want to make sure of a few things with your brake whenever you're tightening it back down. You want to make sure, one, that it's straight with the wheel, so that it's tracking on the same one. Also, you want to make sure that it's even. So if the wall of your rim is like this, you don't want your brake leaned like this or like this or like this. You want it to be straight with it, so when it presses together, it hits and stops. So because I tightened it on the other side, I'm going to tighten it a little bit on this side just to pull this arm back out. So we'll do about a little over a quarter crank. Tap the brakes a couple times. Spin our wheel. Still rubbing just a little bit. So we're going to crank it just a little bit more, another quarter. Tap the brakes again. After doing that, it's now rubbing on the other side. As I said before, brakes are tedious. If you are not a master of brakes, don't offer to work on your friend's bike or your friend's brakes. Getting there. Alright, so what I've discovered is that my wheel is not entirely straight. So until I can get my wheel trued, what I'm going to have to do is loosen my brakes just a little bit. Let me show you how to do that. Alright, so whenever you're tightening or loosening your brakes, you're going to be adjusting the cable. One thing I do to make sure that it's easy to get to the cable is just turn your seat sideways. If you have a quick release, open it, turn your seat a little bit like that, close it or leave it open, it really doesn't matter. Alright, now we have access to this. This little bolt right here is how you adjust the tension of your brake cable. Assuming you have a brake cable, which you should. Again, usually a size 5, so I'm going to loosen that just a little bit. One thing you want to do whenever adjusting your brake cable is you're going to hold your brake arms, usually like this. Otherwise, if you don't keep them pulled together, when you loosen the brake cable, there's not going to be anything, and they're going to just pull apart really fast. So always hold these two arms whenever you're doing this. And release it slowly and tighten it back down. Okay. So now that we've given ourselves a little bit more room to work with, we're going to go back to adjusting. So now the wheel spins freely, neither side of the brakes are rubbing, you're good to go on your brakes. But my disclaimer, whenever you work on one part of your bike, it's generally going to affect something else, because your bike is an entire machine of interrelated parts, and whenever you mess with one, it's usually going to offset another, therefore messing with the perfect harmony of your bike's balance. So you're always going to want to check everything, especially when messing with the drivetrain, which is essentially what this video is. The one thing that I'm not doing, because this is something that you should leave to a professional or a bike shop, which is a professional I guess, is tightening your wheel to be true, or your nipples. Alright, so one thing about when your wheel isn't true is going to make that brake adjustment really difficult, because my wheel is just going like back and forth like that. If you wanted to watch it on your own wheel, you can just spin it, look at it directly, and see if the wheel goes back and forth side to side. If it does, you're going to want to take it somewhere to get trued, which usually isn't that much and it doesn't take them too long, but you're not going to want to do it before your moto. I should probably get it done. Alright, so a couple things to mention before you're on your way with your complete bike check. One is like maybe the most important, because this is the most ground level thing you can do for a bike, is check your tire pressure. You want to make sure your tire pressure is appropriate for the kind of race you're doing and the kind of track it is. So your tire pressure is always going to be a suggested range. Mine for these power blocks is 35 to 65 psi. You're going to always want to pay attention to that, because a lot of people, there's a lot of common myths in BMX about tire pressure. A lot of people are like, go rock solid. I run 100 psi in my power blocks and it's recommended for 65. No, do not do that. BMX does not have shocks. Also, you don't ever want your tires to be that hard. You will lose traction in turns. You'll lose traction out of the gate, which is bad. What I'm going to recommend for most tracks is going to be about 10 less than whatever it recommends. So mine is a maximum of 65 psi. I'm going to recommend you run 50 to 55, maybe 50 in the back, 55 in the front. So those couple considerations you're going to want for tire pressure are going to be traction and rolling resistance. Down the first straight, you're going to want a lot of traction, because you're coming out of the gate strong. You put a lot of pressure and you don't want to spin your back wheel. Also in the first turn, or any turn really, you're going to want to be able to carve it without losing that traction and sliding out. If your tire is too inflated, you're going to slide out. So that's why I'm going to suggest that average of like 50, or like I said, 10 below the recommended. Another thing you're going to want to think about is rolling resistance. If your tire is too soft, you're going to have a lot of rolling resistance. Every time you stop pedaling, it's going to feel like you're slowing down. You don't want that. So you want it to be, like I said, just average, but not too soft, not too hard. It's the perfect balance. Most ground level thing you can do with your bike. Super basic, super important. Alright, another thing to check to complete your entire bike check is going to be, make sure your bars are straight. Make sure that your bars are centered here, and also make sure that your bars and your front wheel are straight. So when you're on your bike, looking at it from above, it's straight. Also, you want to make sure that these bolts right here, these are your pinch bolts on the top. You want to make sure these are tight. That way your bars won't twist from your wheel. You ever seen someone crash and their wheel's all sideways and junk? It's because these right here were not tight enough. And that should do it for your bike check. Alright, so now we've done a little bit of bike mechanic work. I want you all to remember that it's a learning curve. Don't get frustrated if you don't get it right the first time. But if you want to see more videos like this or have any requests, feel free to comment below or subscribe. Thanks for watching.